We've come to Chislehurst in Kent, and we're about to enter 22 miles of underground caves with a long history, and they're haunted too. There's one essential piece of equipment I'm going to need for this Wi-Fi story, and it's an oil lamp, because we've come to Chislehurst Caves in Kent, a massive warren of caves, some of them going back over 4,000 years, and there are all sorts of weird and spooky stories connected with these caves. And the man who's going to take us on the tour is the manager, Terry Hunt. Terry, lead on.
Well, there are a number of ghost stories connected with the caves. There was one of a man in the early 1950s who was supposed to have broken in here when the caves were in disuse at that time. He was some kind of religious fanatic. Apparently took all his clothes off and ran around the caves naked, clutching a Bible. I don't know what he found so exciting about the Bible, but apparently his torch gave out on him, and his body was discovered down here about a week later, diagnosed of having died of fright, and his fingers were quite worn down. He'd actually been feeling his way around the walls here in the total darkness, trying to find his way out. There are stories about a hunchback, an old woman, Roman centurion, cavalier found at the bottom of his own pit. There are stories about horses winning in the caves, because apparently the stables did collapse into the caves at some stage. Crying children, laughing children, playing children, things like that. The most famous of all our ghost stories, of course, is the White Lady at the Haunted Pool. A couple of 100 years ago, Flint Napper was working down here with his wife. They had a little bit of an argument, fell out with each other, she fell in. They weighed her down, apparently with several blocks of chalk. The pool at that time was considerably deeper than it is today. And her ghost is said to haunt this area to this day. There have been several sightings of her. Some people have claimed to see her over the back of the pool there, but most of the sightings have been at the front of the pool there. And for that reason, several years ago, we set up what was known as the Chislehurst Challenge. What that was, anyone that was brave enough or daft enough to want to come down here and spend 12 hours alone at night could win the wonderful reward of £5. They'd be brought down here by a guide who would leave them by the side of the pool with a lantern, a few candles and a box of matches. The guide would then go back out of the cave system, leaving behind him a trail of flour, so that should they change their minds, they could find their way out. Most of them actually managed that before the guide. But the challenge did last for about 30 years, and in all that time, only one man was successful. His name was Tony Bayfield. He was a serving police officer, and he beat the challenge down here in 1958. After he spent some time by the side of the pool, he said he felt that he wanted to get away from it. He found the atmosphere here quite oppressive. So he moved off deeper into the cave system and occupied himself by carving a horse in the wall. While he was doing this, he claimed that he felt some kind of presence move up behind him. He said that he could actually feel breath on the back of his neck, although when he turned round he saw absolutely nothing. But he did say that it was the most terrifying night of his life, and he wouldn't come back down here again for any amount of money, certainly not for a fiver. And this is the main Druid altar. There are several altars in the system, 9 in fact. This is the largest of the 9. The smaller ones would probably have been used for animal sacrifice. It is fairly certain that this one would have been used for human sacrifice. The favoured victims were blonde, blue-eyed boys. They would be laid on the altar, feet at that end, head at this end. At the appropriate part of the ceremony, the Druid priest would step forward and slit his victim's throat with a flint dagger. Blood would run down the sloping altar and would be collected in a bowl or a chalice that was kept there for the purpose. Although, despite the reputation of this area, nobody claims to have seen any of the victims, but we have had mediums on tour, and several of them stated they have seen hooded figures in this area, presumably Druids.
Well, we've been for a wander around these mysterious caves with Terry, and they really are pretty spooky, I have to tell you, and very atmospheric. But what about the history? Is it myth or is it fact or fiction? Well, I'm joined by Eric Inman, who's a local author and historian. Eric, what is the history of these caves? Why were they put here in the first place? Why were they made?
Well, the original purpose of the caves was for the mining of chalk and flint. And the earliest printed reference is in the 1200s. Thereafter, they were used for smuggling, and then at the beginning of this century as a tourist attraction, until the outbreak of the Great War, when they became a munition dump. Then they were used for growing mushrooms, and then during the last war, they were home to over 15,000 people at the height of the bombing. And some of them reported seeing ghostly figures.
What other ghost stories are there associated with the mines here?
A lot of the stories about whispering voices, the neighing of horses, and there is material evidence because in the early 1980s a psychic research society came down here and actually recorded some of these noises.
So what do you feel about the hauntings and the ghosts that are reported here in the caves?
My own view is that there is concrete evidence that this place is haunted, and I don't think it's surprising considering its history.
Well, I can tell you that there is an amazing atmosphere in these caves. It's very dank, it's very damp, it's extremely scary and spooky. One of the most scary things about these caves is that they are absolutely pitch black. The only light in here at the moment is the camera light. If that goes, it is pitch black and you can't see it. No, don't leave me here. No, come back. No, don't go. Ah!